All right, let's take one more segment here to talk a bit about the latest indictment. Everything's going to slow down now, I think, because now that the charges have been filed, the very, very, very slow process of getting to all four of these trials begins. Donald Trump and 18 associates indicted in Georgia late yesterday based on their efforts to overturn the 2020 election loss in the state. Prosecutors using a statute normally associated with mobsters to accuse Trump, his lawyers, and other aides of a criminal enterprise to keep him in power. So a lot of facets to this. Now let's welcome back for analysis ABC News legal analyst. He's out in Los Angeles. It's always good to have Royal Oakes here. Royal, thank you very much, sir. In your opinion, what is the significance of the use of RICO here?
The use of RICO is a little bit confusing to a lot of folks. You hear RICO and it's got the word racketeering in it. You think of the mafia, organized crime. Nobody is claiming that Donald Trump and the other folks who were indicted are in the mafia or racketeers. Instead, the statute is very broad in Georgia. Basically, if you and any other person or multiple people agree to commit a crime really of any kind, you can be guilty of racketeering, and it's a 20-year prison term, so it's a very serious charge.
If Donald Trump is able to move this to the federal court in Georgia, does that give him the ability to pardon himself if he's found guilty in Georgia?
Yeah, he could. And, of course, you may move a criminal case that's filed against you in state court over to the federal court system if you comply with certain rules. Principally, you have to show the federal court judge that it belongs in federal court because really federal laws are the main laws that are addressed in the case. It's difficult to get it to move because many federal judges like to kick the cases back to state court, even though somebody tries to move it. But, yeah, as you suggest, if Donald Trump were to become president again, and if he did have a federal court conviction, theoretically he could pardon himself. Supreme Court has never weighed in on that, but most scholars think that, yeah, they probably would be okay with it.
One of the portions of this large indictment is the fact that allegedly they found a clear conspiracy to steal data and or machines from a rural county in Georgia. Is that what you read?
Yeah, so there's this rural county called Coffee County, and one of the Trump strategies was, hey, let's take a look at the vote machines. Let's kind of reverse engineer it and see if we can find evidence of fraud. Let's hire an IT specialist to look at it and see if there was some funny business going on. The difficulty is the Trump allies did not have a legal right to possess the machine, and as a result, that's part of the indictment.
So they have to prove that Donald Trump knew details of all of these schemes to make this stick, don't they?
They really do, and that's Donald Trump's best defense. You know, we talk about free speech and so on, but really what it boils down to is if Donald Trump is able to look a jury in the eye and say, you know what, I'm no lawyer. I relied on a bunch of lawyers, Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, et cetera, and they were all telling me I had a right to pursue this allegation of election fraud, and I had a right to urge Mike Pence to do the right thing and send the questionable votes back to the states. If he can do that, he can overcome the criminal allegation because really these are crimes that require proof that Donald Trump was aware that he was breaking the law.
Well, when it comes down to that infamous phone call, can't he say as commander-in-chief, I could call a governor or a secretary of state of any state and say, look into it because I've heard there's improprieties?
Yeah, that's right. He has a right to, as commander-in-chief or just as a private citizen, to speak those words. The difficulty from his standpoint is that if there are a bunch of people, including the other 18 who are indicted, who are prepared to flip and avoid decades in prison and say, well, yeah, Donald Trump, he spoke to me about this. He knew darn well that there was no legitimate basis for it. He was just trying to pressure Republican officials in Georgia. That's the problem he faces. On the other hand, if he is able to convince a jury that based on advice he'd received, he really felt there was fraud in Georgia, and all he was asking for was for them to look harder and hopefully find the 12,000 votes he would need to win the state, then a jury might say, you know what, I don't think the prosecution's done their job.
Royal, I heard Willis say last night that she intends to try all 19 together. That seems unbelievably complicated. What does that do to the timetable?
Let's call it aspirational. I have a feeling that she and her folks are talking about that and realizing that that's not a good idea. For one thing, she wants this case to go to trial in 6 months. and that's not going to happen because there are other cases ahead of her. But the other thing is, if you stuck to your guns and said, doggone it, I want a giant hearing, a trial, we're going to rent an auditorium, it would take years to get through that process. I don't think the DA wants this to take years. I think she wants a conviction in the books by Election Day next year.
And so now we have 4 indictments, 4 different courtrooms. Now it's a waiting game, isn't it?
It really is. And, of course, overlaid on top of the waiting game are every 2 weeks you've got primaries, you've got Republican and Democrat conventions, you've got the campaign. So Donald Trump's year is chock-a-block. And, of course, critics of the indictment say, well, this is mission accomplished for the Democrats. They want to distract the guy and have people thinking and talking about his criminal charges. As a matter of fact, cameras are forbidden in all federal courts across the land. But many people are saying, no, let's make an exception. Let's change the rules. Let's put the Donald Trump trials on television in federal court. And that's going to be a source of debate as well down the line.
Well, it's a good exercise for our representative republic. We're exercising muscles we never have before.
That's right. I mean, we've had high-profile trials before, and O.J. was on TV. And if some critics of Donald Trump get their way, then we're going to have a Donald Trump federal court televised trial as well.
Royal Oaks, thank you very much for your time and expertise. Much appreciated, sir.
You bet. Thanks.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong. We talked to the congressmen, and they were surprised. But I guess there was a person named Mr. Raynard that came to these meetings and presented data. And he said that there was dead people, I believe it was upward of 5,000. The actual number were 2. 2 people that were dead that voted. And so that's wrong. That was 2.
Well, Cleta, how do you respond to that?
So look, just take care of business for me. I'll get it to the House of Representatives, and then we'll take care of the rest here in D.C.
So tell me, Brad, what are we going to do? We won the election, and it's not fair to take it away from us like this. And it's going to be very costly in many ways. And I think you have to say that you're going to re-examine it, and you can re-examine it, but re-examine it with people that want to find answers, not people that don't want to find answers.